I'm getting told from upstairs to hold up, so. Good evening, everybody. I'm so delighted that you're here for this special event. Charles and I have talked about a Faith in the Arts series for probably a year, 18 months at least, in different formats. And we're so happy that this year we can finally kick it off and we can start getting back together. But we really, the arts affect us in so many ways, whether it is movies, a good painting, a wonderful book, a poem, something that just unexpectedly brings tears to our eyes. We can almost sense that the Spirit is at work in arts. And so we want to explore that. And as I mentioned in our newsletter column, I think during the pandemic, we found how important the arts were to us. I think I will always hold on to that memory of when Italy was in such devastation and people were singing to each other from the balconies of their apartments. What a glorious message of hope and what arts can do for us. And we're thrilled to have Southwest Virginia filmmakers and actors here with us tonight. We're pleased to welcome David Alford and Joseph Stamm, who have done 3 Christian movies now and are working on even more projects. And we're just delighted to have them here and sharing their experience with us to kick off this series. We hope to have several more formal presentations during the year, and then perhaps some experimental programs where we can create some of our own art. But we'll go from here. But let us begin with this program tonight, and let us get started with a word of prayer. Would you all bow with me, please? Creator of all, how amazing it is to consider that when you created us in your image, you gave us the ability to create. While you mold us like soft clay, you also provide sparks and even fire to animate us, a spirit that gives life. We are certainly blessed by those who follow your call and use their gifts to make the world a more joyful and beautiful realm, a more compassionate and loving place to be, who help us learn to understand you and our brothers and sisters more clearly through stories, song, films, poems, paintings, and so many other works. Through their work, we are able to see more clearly the truth around us, and they often inspire wonder and awe in our living. Through their hope and vision, they remind us that life is holy. Bless all who create in your image, Lord, and pour your spirit of inspiration upon them. We particularly ask this evening for your blessing upon David and Joseph. We give thanks for them, their work, and our time together. And God, you who are our greatest inspiration, remind us too that you gave us all the ability to create. Forgive us for not believing that we are all artists and poets, capable of expressing beauty, love, and your truth through creativity. Give us the courage to let go of our fears, the lack of confidence that holds us back, and learn how to paint outside the lines, whether we're facing a blank get well card or a canvas or a kitchen pantry. Help us to experience joy in the small creative acts of the everyday. In our living, help us to take up the divine spark you gave each one of us to create. In the name of Jesus Christ, our risen Lord, we pray. Amen. And so now it's my great pleasure to welcome David and Joseph to share a bit about their journey and their filmmaking. Please welcome them.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate it. And thank you all for having us here today and for joining us on this beautiful afternoon. I understand this is the first of this series. We are, in fact, the guinea pigs of the bunch. So we'll see how this goes. And if y'all like it, they'll do more of this. As she's mentioned, we're filmmakers, and that's a new thing for me. I've been a filmmaker for about 3 years now. Before that, I was an actor at the Barter Theater for about 11 years and did stuff with them, all different kinds of plays and musicals and dramas, and basically told stories, which is what I've been doing most of my life since I was a little boy. And many of you probably identify with that. You have great imaginations as kids. You love to tell stories. You love to act out things with toys and make stories happen. And my mom is here today. She'll testify. I would sit in my room for hours playing with my Star Wars action figures. Yes, the original ones from the beginning. And I would just make out stories and act them out with all those figurines. And I could do that and entertain myself forever. Well, I think some things have not changed. I'm still doing that, and I'm 54 years old. So I guess we don't change that much. When it comes to telling stories, I mean, we have the original storyteller to base our stories off of. And when I look at the Bible, it is so full of so many rich and in-depth stories that it encourages me in my storytelling. But I've learned some things as a new Christian filmmaker, and that is that the Christian film market is kind of a beast all in of itself. The things that happen within that marketplace are a little bit different than maybe what I expected. Some good things and some maybe not so good things. So we'll hear a little bit about that today in our experiences of making films in the Christian, specifically in the Christian marketplace, and how that impacts storytelling, because it is a challenge sometimes. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The art of filmmaking is a team art situation. It's not like being a painter or being a songwriter where it's just you and the canvas or just you and the instrument. It's you and a group of people, a team of people working with you. And in some cases, for me, being an actor in a professional theater, I was, in many cases, the only Christian in the room as far as having faith and being an artist. And it got to be challenging at times, I'll be honest, because we're all working together to tell stories. And I wanted to tell stories as well as everyone else, but sometimes the stories that were selected to tell are not necessarily stories that I was super excited about telling. Sometimes they were. Sometimes there are stories I would get real excited about telling. Because when I look for a story to tell, I kind of look for there being truth in it. And as we all know, there's a lot of movies being made, and a lot of plays being written, and a lot of musicals being written, where the content is not the truth. So as a storyteller and a Christian, I want to make sure that the stories I tell have the truth in them. Because otherwise, why? Why tell the story? You're not helping your brothers and sisters. So as a Christian artist and a filmmaker looking for the truth, that's really what I look for when I create stories. I start with the beginning of what does God want me to say in this situation, or what does he have on my heart that I want to tell? And I build a story off that. As far as being a filmmaker and a team, in our situation, a lot of the people that work with us are Christians, but in some cases they're not. We have non-Christians on our filmmaking team too, and I tell you that's been a blessing. Because for them, they're spending intensive time with Christians, seeing how we operate, how we do things, and they're seeing that life is a little different with us. So we're getting to be a witness for those folks and working side by side with them. And that's turned out to be a really great blessing as well, too. So when it comes to making a film, we'll put together a project, I'll write a story, we'll put the film out there, and then we'll take it to the Christian marketplace, and they will then evaluate it. That's a painful process, let me tell you, because the Christian marketplace will go over it with a fine-tooth comb and say, hey, is this content in here? Is this content in here? Is this good? Is this bad? Evaluate, score it, and if the score is high enough, we'll let people see it. If it's not high enough, we won't let people see it. And I have to go back and say, well, this Bible story has some content that's kind of hard. Would you let this story get through? It's got truth in it. It's talking about things that really happened, and it's not being salacious. And I think this is what's happened. Hollywood's kind of, it's taken over things. You've all seen commercials or gone to movies and thought, that was a little harder than I wanted it to be. We've taken sin and we're kind of reveling in it, and we're kind of rolling around in it, and we're exaggerating it to sell tickets to get people to come see our movies. And that's where Hollywood, Christian film industry's kind of backlashed against that. We've said, we don't want to do that, and I don't want to do that. There's no point in that. I don't want to show people lots of sin and glorify it and make it look fantastic so people will buy tickets and come see my movie. I don't want to do that at all. And the Christian film market doesn't want to do that. So they've gone the other way. They've said, okay, we're going to make sure that there's nothing like that in our stories. Well, the problem is when you take all of bad things in the world out of stories and you sugarcoat everything to look really great, suddenly the world in that movie doesn't quite look like the world we live in. And I think Christian films have struggled, honestly, for the last 10, 15 years because they've put out a lot of content that people in the world look at and go, I don't recognize that world. I don't see that. So the challenge for us as filmmakers is, how do we create stories that reflect the real world and show the truth that is in it? And that has been the biggest challenge for the last couple of years. And writing scripts, I try so hard to keep the truth in my stories, and I try to tell stories that reflect the world that we're in without getting too much into it. So I think that's a hard balance, and I don't know that I found the perfect balance yet, but I'm getting there. I mean, I think we're all getting there. But as a filmmaker, that's really the hardest part of the whole thing, is telling stories that feel like real people in real situations, reflect the truth of God, but don't offend anybody who doesn't want anything in their films. So I hope you'll understand as we talk about movie making that it's a new thing. I grew up in the 80s when Christian music was kind of going through a lot of changes. If y'all remember back in those days, Christian music was a lot of mom and pop groups singing with labels owned by an individual. And all of a sudden these artists came along and they started getting really popular, and some of them were getting popular in the popular world of pop music, and the industry itself just exploded in popularity, and all of a sudden there were more artists, and there was a lot of debate about, is this song really good content, or are we just spreading more pop music? And there was a big debate about Christian music for a good 10 years. And I think Christian films kind of reaching that point too, where we're trying to reach in that point where it's like, what is good content and what is art and what is just more filth. We're just recreating what the world is doing, which is not necessary either. So I think filmmaking is kind of hitting that point in the Christian marketplace. So please be in prayer for Christian filmmakers. It's a tough time. There's a lot of pressure to make stories that are commercially successful, that people will want to buy and watch. There's a lot of pressure to imitate Hallmark movies, because Hallmark movies are popular. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Hallmark. They're very popular. Those things, they all sound kind of similar to me. They kind of have that same pattern. I think, start about 10 minutes in, you go, oh, that's going to happen. The guy in the flannel from the country is going to fall in love with the girl from the city, and they're going to get married at the end. But it's popular. And there's a lot of temptation in Christian filmmaking to just kind of recreate that because it will make money for you. Well, that's a hard thing. Making movies is expensive, and so there's a lot of pressure to make money. But again, we're still Christian filmmakers. We're out here with a message of trying to share the truth. So there's a balancing between the two. So please be in prayer for Christian filmmakers. It's a hard place to be. It's a hard thing to balance. And it takes a lot to make a movie, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. I'm going to introduce Joseph Stam. He's been making movies with me since the beginning. When we started, I started in 2019. I just wrote a little script on my computer. I was going to write a play for the Barter's Playwright Festival because I've been wanting to write a play for a long time. And I thought, oh, this will be fun. I'll write a play. And I started writing. I was like, this really doesn't work on stage. Maybe I'll make a screenplay. Maybe that would work. So I decided to write it in a screenplay format. And liked it. I kind of shared it with a few friends and they liked it. I thought, well, it's short. It's only about 30 pages long. Maybe I can make it. So I started asking around some friends who I knew had done some short films in the area before, and they all wanted to help. So I was like, okay. So I needed a hospital. Now, in filmmaking, especially low budget filmmaking, which we've been doing, coming up with a hospital is not an easy thing. If someone said, hey, you need a hospital room and it needs to be convincing, could you come up with one? You look around your house going, I really don't have anything here that looks anything like a hospital. So we went to Johnston Memorial Hospital and I said, I don't know if this is possible. Is it possible we could shoot a film here? And they said, well, we don't get asked that very much. I'm sure you don't. They said, but we have a whole wing that's closed. We have a nursing shortage. There's an entire wing of the hospital that's completely closed and we're not using it. So I guess if y'all don't make too much noise, you could shoot in there. We're like, oh, I have a hospital. So that's one of those God-affirming things that's like, okay, God, thank you for the hospital. So we went ahead and shot over a 4-day weekend, several different locations, one being Johnston Memorial. And we made a short film. Well, that short film, we entered it in what's called Christian film festivals. It's like places where you can submit your film, you pay a little fee, and if they like it, they select it, and then they show it in their festival. And if more people like it, they sometimes give it awards and things. So I was like, okay, I'll try that. So I got my little short film that I shot at Johnston Memorial Hospital and submitted it to film festivals. And next thing you know, it started getting into film festival after film festival. 13 film festivals out of 14 took it. The 14th one actually closed and didn't happen, so they didn't take it at all. But the other 13 took the film and selected it. I was like, oh, okay, that's good, I guess. So I talked to a company that's called a distributor, and distributors are like talent agents for actors. They basically will say, okay, we'll take your film and we're going to show it around to everybody we know, and we'll try to sell it for you, and then we'll share the money with you, because that's what they do. And so they took our film and they started sharing it with platforms and streaming platforms from all over the world. And the little film is called Cross Purposes, and it started showing up on different platforms. And before we knew it, it was on global platforms all around the world with this distribution company. Well, we were encouraged by this, as you can imagine. So we said, well, maybe we can make a 2-hour movie, a full-length feature film. We'll give it a shot. So I started writing a full-length feature based on a book that I had started writing on my computer. Book writers, I'm with you. I'm right there with you. I started writing a book, and I thought, oh, I never finished it, but I thought I'll make it into a screenplay. And so I started transferring it to a screenplay, and I started working on it. And then Joseph, who was the lead actor in that little short film we shot at Johnston Memorial Hospital, is a 16-year-old kid, but he was the main character in that story. He's like, well, I kind of want to write too. And he started showing me some stuff he was writing. I'm like, well, that's good. That's really good. So I said, here, try this. And he started writing some scenes in the movie with me. And so we got the screenplay finished. And about the time we started getting ready to shoot it, the company that has the distributor called and said, do you have another movie? Cross Purposes is doing really well. Well, we just shot one. And we literally just spent about a month it wasn't a month, was it? We had hoped it was going to be a month. COVID hit. And so we couldn't shoot for more than 2 weeks because the governor was saying, groups of 20, groups of 10, groups of you and your family, can get together and nobody else. That was all starting to come down the pike. So we shot the movie really fast. The distribution company wanted it and said, we'll take it. And so they took that one as well too. And so Found was born, and it literally has gone everywhere. At this point, we're over 7-8 million views of Found around the world. And I had no clue that was going to happen. So it's been quite a ride. And Joseph was also the lead actor in Found as well too. So he's been really busy with this process with me. So we shot another film this last summer called Royal Ashes, which we have some clips from. We'll show you some clips here in a little bit and talk about it. Joseph did not write Royal Ashes with me, but he helped direct Royal Ashes with me. So he's been super involved in this process. So let me bring him up for you and let him say hi to you. Come on up, Joe. And he's only 19, but now has acted lead role in 2 films, done a supporting role, and then directed and written a film. So he's pretty accomplished at this age. But as a Christian, also has some issues with faith and arts.
I think you meant to say I'm already 19, not only 19, but yeah, no, this has been a wild process, and I've learned a lot about faith and arts. And for me, a lot of times what it comes down to is just what perspective you're telling a story from and your worldview. Because as a Christian, you're going to have a particular worldview. And any story that you sit down and no matter what it's about, if you're going to tell that story, it's going to come from you. It's going to come from your worldview. And so that is a really great thing and a really special thing, and having a lot of prayer going into those projects will help, just make sure that it's something that God wants you to be creating. But along with that comes an obligation to make what you're doing, just making it with excellence, because as a Christian, anything that you do put your time into, you have to be a witness for God in anything you're doing. And so along with trying to create something that specifically like a film that is intended for other people to see, you have to take that obligation on and that responsibility on, that you are representing Christ. And so that is a responsibility. But yeah, I don't know, a lot of what I was going to say about that you had said, but I think that you can tell that Mr. Alford is a man of his word through the stories that he makes, just talking about the different truths that are in those stories. I think a testament to that is the people who worked on the projects with us, who didn't share the same faith as us, but had such a passion for these projects because they saw that there was truth in them, even if they didn't quite agree with our faith. And I think some of them had started to open up to that and started to go to church and just kind of figure their spiritual walk out. So I think that is something that I didn't expect, is that as you're making the films, yes, you're making it with an intention to show it to an audience so that they will see what you're trying to say and what perspective you're coming from, but you're also working alongside people, and you're just as much as a witness working on the project than showing the project to an audience.
All right, well, we're going to talk a little bit about filmmaking, but this is an open conversation. So at this point, you can sit up in your chair and kind of wake yourself up a little bit after my droning on. We're here to talk with you and interact with you. So to encourage this, we have a giveaway. So we brought with us our film, which is that first feature film I told you about that we shot also here in Southwest Virginia, and a t-shirt to go with it. And I have about 6 different sizes, so if this size is not right, you let me know. We're gonna have this for the best question of the session. Now we're the judges, so don't feel judged, but we are judging you. And we're gonna ask you for the best question that you've got. So if you've got a question about filmmaking, we're gonna talk a little bit through the process. Just stick a hand up or just shout out. Been a high school teacher for 3 years. You can't flat me. Just shout out if you need to, or wave a hand. I will stop mid-thought and address what you're talking about. But let's talk a little bit about filmmaking. Keep this over here to kind of evaluate those questions. Just ask a question if you want to. Filmmaking is a lot more complicated than it seems. We all watch movies. We watch a lot of movies. We watch a lot of movies at home. You probably have during the pandemic. I think we all watched more movies in the pandemic than we did in our entire lives combined, because there was not much else we could go do. So we all watch a lot of movies, and it's one thing to sit on a couch and watch a movie happen in front of you. You think, oh, well, they had a microphone and they had a camera and they had the actors act and they recorded it and went home and called it a day. If only it were that simple. If only it were that easy. In the last couple of years, we've learned a lot about filmmaking. And one thing is that I did not realize, but when actors are talking on a set and they've got their microphone or those boom mics, those long poles that hang down a microphone between them, that's the only sound that can be made. Like that can't happen. The setting down a plate on a table, that noise can't happen. Eating, we have a whole scene in Found. There's like a 3-minute dinner scene where a family sits around a table and eats dinner. That was the hardest thing I think we've ever shot in our entire lives. Who knew the clicking of the dishes couldn't happen? In fact, the choreography of when to take a sip from the glass or when to take a bite of the food, that had to be choreographed because we had to shoot 4 different angles around the table to get everyone who was doing it. And when you cut back and forth between shots, people have to be doing the same thing. So if Joseph's here taking a sip of his glass and I'm shooting with the camera, and then if I shoot to a different angle, if Joseph's not drinking with that glass,
or drinking in the left hand,
or switch to the left hand, there's a jump in the shot, and it's weird looking. And you may have seen it, especially if you watch Hallmark movies, you'll catch it sometimes, where someone's looking one way, then we cut, and they're looking over this way, and there's this little jump thing. Just for a second, it takes you out of the movie. That happens. So when it comes to recording, you can only record the voices of the actors talking, and then later you have to go back in and put all those noises in on top of it. So we've got a scene from our new film called Royal Ashes. And it's the kitchen scene. We're gonna do that one first. We're gonna show you a scene from the kitchen, and he's gonna call it up and Joseph set up on YouTube for us. And in this scene, it takes place in the restaurant of a kitchen restaurant. And there's lots of waiters coming in and out the door, and there's lots of food being made, and there's cooks, and there's actors talking. And if you look at this scene, you're gonna think, oh, they just had a microphone and they had a camera and they just said action and they just did the scene. Then they all had a lovely lunch and went home and called it a day. Oh no. Go ahead and set up the scene for what's happening in the story, Joe, and then we'll show it to us.
What's happening in the story?
Yeah, just let them know what's happening in the story. Before we start, just let them set up what's happening in the story itself. The dining room scene from the very top. Because we got the part where
I'm trying to remember where this is in the story.
is this where Paul comes in, where Kevin or Lucas comes in?
Oh, right,
Is that-
right,
is that-
right.
is that
Yeah,
what you got?
yeah.
Okay.
This is pretty much the first scene, so I
Okay,
don't
it's
know
first
that we
scene.
have to set it up.
Okay, cool. So it's the first scene.
This is the first scene of the movie.
We'll see what it is.
Hold the ketchup and onion on that burger medium well. The ticket says well done. He changed his mind. I can't uncook a burger.
Table 12 is still waiting on steak fries.
AJ,
3 specials.
we're out of the chicken salad.
It's still on the board.
Then erase it and push the steak.
Hey, Paul, some guy out front wants to talk to you.
I'm busy. Look, if it's a compliment, tell him I said thank you. If it's a complaint, AJ made the slaw.
You can't knock my slaw, dude.
2 chicken finger baskets, both with fries. More fries.
Because they're the best.
Paul, your brother wants to talk to you. He looks upset.
My brother.
What? Am I running a daycare here? I got a dining room full of hungry customers, and this lump is blocking the kitchen door.
Lucas?
Get rid of him?
Hey, you, come over here. I don't know how. Just don't let anything burn. I'll be right back. Dude, what are you doing here?
Kevin's gone. I can't find him.
Gone?
He's running out of the house. I don't know where he went.
Okay, how long has he been missing?
An hour, maybe 2. Jordy was supposed to be watching
What's
him.
the matter
but-
with you? You never flipped a burger before?
No, sir.
Then why are you on my grill? And who are you anyways?
I'm Neil. You hired me yesterday.
Yeah? Well, you're fired today. Where's Royal? Royal! What are you trying to do? Burn down my restaurant, leaving papers here on the grill?
There's a problem at home.
Yeah, well, there's a tragedy at work. His name is Neil.
Am I really fired?
Just get back to the dishes, will you?
I'm a waiter.
I don't care if you're Mother Teresa. Do the dishes.
Look, I gotta go. My brother's in trouble.
The half-wit?
Don't call him that.
I'll be right back. Just call it my lunch break.
You're shift leader and cook. You can't take a break in the middle of a rush.
You go by True's and check Pine Street. I'll go by the garage and hit Penny Alley. I'll meet you back at 5th. Look, I gotta go.
Yeah? Well, don't bother coming back this time.
So remember what we said about when you're recording, the only sounds that can be heard are the actors talking. Well, that was a real industrial kitchen. Was it Cajun Persuasion?
Yep.
Over in Abingdon, if you ever driven by Abingdon, it used to be a different restaurant. It used to be the Dunkin' Deli over there, but now it's a restaurant called Cajun Persuasion. And they were temporarily closed due to COVID, so they let us use their kitchen to shoot the scene. Because again, you got to come up with a kitchen somewhere. So, so they let us do it. So we shot the scene. Well, there's an oven on the, there's a fan over the stove that once the stove reaches a certain temperature with cooking, an industrial fan kicks on, goes, so every time that fan kicked on, we had to go, hold, stop. We had to cool the stove back down because the fan would be picked up on these super sensitive microphones that were meant to get nothing but voices.
Yeah. No, you can, those microphones will pick up anything. And so all of that audio we had to add in afterwards. So we would have to do it just with the dialogue. We couldn't have any of the kitchen utilities making any noise. We'd have to turn them all off and then record it that way and then record it. Sometimes we would record scenes without the dialogue next time and just get the sound effects and everything afterwards. And whichever ones we didn't get on set, we would have to add in afterwards with sound effects editor.
Yeah, Joseph and I just got back from Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago where we went to a place called Kappa Studios, and they do what's called Foley sounds. And that's where an artist basically just looks at the movie and makes the sounds that you hear in the movie. If someone sets something down, they set it down on the countertop at the same time. And they're in there with a microphone and they're just recreating sound effects to make it sound authentic. And that had to be done a great deal. One of the interesting things is we were sitting in the studio, they had set up a theater-sized screen. We were watching the movie and they were playing it for us. And the engineer looked at that scene and he said, do you see those actors going in and out the back with the door that was going, with the kitchen door that was going back and forth? He said, don't you think we ought to hear that kitchen door? I was like, we kind of thought, I guess we then have it. So we didn't, we made that door really quiet so it wouldn't make any noise. So he's able to take a sound effect of a kitchen door, and he just watched the film. Every time someone walked out that door, he'd apply the sound effect, and he'd stretch it or shrink it to make it match the door swing. So he just, within 10 minutes, he had thump, 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 thump. And it's just very small. It's in the background of the scene. You barely hear it. But just that little bit of sound makes the whole thing seem more realistic. Same thing with the dishes washing. The dishes washing is a sound effect as well, too.
Dishes washing and the oven and the stove and everything. The other interesting aspect, aside from audio with this clip, is the camera work, because before we went, we're going to shoot the film, we went through and planned out each shot in the film and how we wanted it to feel, how we wanted it to look, what distance away from the subject we were filming we wanted it to be. So you can either have a close-up or extreme close-up, which is just think really tight on the eye, like all you can see. And then you have a close-up, which is someone's face, medium close-up, which is about there. And then you have medium close-up, then a wide shot, and then you have an extreme wide shot. And so we would go through and describe the movement of the camera and the size of the lens we wanted to use to achieve what effect. And you can plan a lot, and I would like to plan a lot more for future projects, because you're always learning how much. You can never plan too much for a film. But once you get to set, things change as well, because actors would do things that you didn't think they would do, but actually make sense, and you just have to be flexible and say, okay, let's go that direction, and let's not use this camera rig that we were going to set up. Let's go another direction. You kind of have to trust that and trust your storytelling instincts that way. So for this scene, you probably noticed those whip pans that we did, where basically take the camera, and then the director of photography will be holding it, and then he'll just whip it over to someone else. And originally I had about, the way I wanted to do the whip pans was while Luke Paul, the one who was at the stove in the beginning, he was talking to all the different characters, and I wanted that to be all one shot. So we would go from him to the character, back to him to the character, to him to this character, But we realized that, okay, either that we'll have to do it really slowly so that it will just look really playful, and that will kind of take the energy out of the scene, or we would have to do that super fast and then make our audience super dizzy and probably get sick in the theater, which is not what we're trying to do either. So we ended up having to settle with those two whip pans, and then we actually did find another instance in the film to do kind of a slower whip pan from character to character to character, which ended up making for a great comedic, playful bit later in the story. So you have to plan so much, but then also be ready to change your plans at a moment's notice.
Yes, sir. We have an editor that's done all three of our movies. It's actually Joseph's oldest brother. He went to Liberty University and studied film editing, and he's extremely talented. And so he's edited all of our films for us. So he's put together the rough cuts from beginning, and frankly, I can't think of another editor I'd want to use, because you get to where you work with your editors and your teams, and you get to know each other. And you almost anticipate what the other person's going to say and do. Timothy almost anticipates us and what we need. And once you've got that kind of relationship with an editor, you don't let go of it very easily. It's like a marriage. Hang on. Treat them right, work well, and hang on, because it's a good thing, and it's like a good relationship. That's a really good question. Yeah. So I don't want to get too, go ahead. That's what I was going to get to next.
Yes.
That's a really good question. I was going to get all the technical stuff. So if you had a question about technical things, let me know. Otherwise, we'll get into the acting part of it, because that's a whole different ball game. So we answer questions about technical. I didn't want to get too much into technical. So when it comes to working with actors on film, It is a different ballgame than acting on stage.
We are difficult.
Acting on stage is big. I mean, you see how far you are away from us. If I'm an actor on stage, I have to do things bigger. I have to talk louder and I have to project bigger. I have to enlarge things a little bit so that you can see me and it looks natural from 50 feet away. When you're acting for a camera, the camera is right here to here. And if you do anything too big, you look like a crazy person on camera. You've got to shrink it all down and take it really small. So Joseph went through the process of being a stage actor one summer and then a film actor the next summer. He could tell it better than I can.
Well, that was the interesting thing, is realizing that, you know, when you're on stage, it wasn't too hard for me to separate those two. On stage acting, you have to make it big so that you're basically welcoming everyone into what you're doing. You need to show them. You're showing on stage, but it's the very opposite when you're acting in front of a camera. For me, it was really easy to ignore the camera and not even, I would forget when we were doing cross purposes and we were doing those scenes just in that hospital room. Once they said action, there was no one else in the room except me and the other characters that we were, like, it was just so focused in, and the character was so specific, and I knew if I was in his headspace, and if I was, then no one else existed except us. And so, but yeah, no, it's all about restraint. It's the very opposite from stage acting, is instead of it all being out here and welcoming everyone in, everything has to be going on inside, but you're trying not to show. You're trying not to show what's going on. And so then, instead of everyone being like, wow, he is acting right now, they're going, what is he doing? It makes the audience lean in instead of lean back because you're overdoing it.
I think we got a scene that's going to help us. We're going to cue up the cookie scene if we could. In the movie, we have Joseph plays a supporting role in this new movie that we're about to debut next Friday night over in Bristol at the theater. He plays an autistic boy who's pretty high up on the spectrum. So in this scene, he's sitting in his mom's room. He had given his mom this plate of cookies weeks ago, but his mom's addicted, has an addiction problem, and has left to go into rehab and left the kids at home alone with the oldest son. And so Joseph plays Kevin, and Luke plays the oldest son who's been taking care of these kids while the parents are gone. The parents are nowhere to be found. So Kevin has found the cookies he gave his mom weeks ago and is very disappointed that she never enjoyed them or never took them, because he'd really gone to a lot of trouble in the movie to get these cookies to her. So in this scene, it is very intimate, it is very small, it is very internal, and there's so much going on. So for these actors, it'll be interesting. You check with Joseph after the scene, because this was a very emotional scene for both actors, and it took them a while to step out of it. But let's go ahead and take it, roll the scene, and this is between Kevin and Paul.
Mom's cookies. She didn't want them?
I'm sorry. Okay.
I gave them to her.
She probably just wasn't feeling well enough to eat them.
They were right there the whole time. It might have made her feel better if she would have tried them.
Yeah. Yeah, it might have.
Jenny's gone. I miss her.
Me too.
Jenny talks to me.
I talk to you.
Jenny doesn't yell at me to wash my clothes.
We talk about other things too.
Jenny talks to me about God.
Yeah?
And how he made me this way.
What do you think about that?
It's okay.
Huh. It's not okay. You're amazing. The way you're made. Kev. You see things. Important things. That I get busy and I forget about. You're not just okay, Kev. You're a gift. I wouldn't want you any other way.
Want a cookie?
It's kind of... Oh. That's really
That's terrible. They were better before.
See, you get a sense for how small and intimate that was. It's so right here. And there's so much air and thought going on between each line. It's not just about the words that you say, it's about what you're thinking and reacting in your mind in between the words. And I think Joseph and Luke really capture that well in that scene. But yeah, express that.
Yeah, that was the scene that I first did with Luke. That when we were still kind of doing the audition process and screening, doing some screen tests and just kind of figuring out who was going to be cast as what and who we were going to cast. And that was the one that kind of was like, okay, this is something right here. Kevin was just such an interesting character because it was just, in some ways very similar to me, but in a lot of ways very different. And so what was good about that is that I knew whether I was Kevin or not. It was very distinct. So I was bouncing back and forth on this film from acting to directing. So I would go and I would talk to the director of photography, have my notes and everything about what I had prepared and tell him what feeling we're going for with each shot, what emotion we want to get from it, and what rig I was thinking we would use, and everything. Because while you're having all this in mind, you also want to have editing in mind and, the whole project in mind. So I would just get all my notes out, and then I would go run and be in a corridor for 15 minutes and just kind of clear my head and get into be Kevin. And so then I would go and do a scene, especially one like this. It was very emotional. And then afterwards, and while you're doing the scene, you don't realize exactly what you're doing, because the characters don't know they have a camera on them, so they're not paying attention to that. So, and especially Kevin, he's not self-conscious at all. That's something that I had to work on with my voice, just being completely free and open with my voice and everything, because he's not, what others think of him is not even something that he takes into consideration. And so I don't even realize what I'm exactly doing. I know what's happening on the inside, but I don't know what's happening on the outside while I'm doing the scene. And then especially one that's so emotional as that, afterwards it would take me a while to settle down and get out of character and things, and then be able to talk through what we were doing next with the director of photography. And I would have, it was strange because then while I was like working on directing and everything, I'd start doing having weird tics and things and I was like, that's a Kevin thing, that's not a, okay, well, anyway, focusing.
What you don't realize too is that's, each of those shots, there was a shot where you could see both of them. There's a shot where you could just see Kevin. So those aren't all shot at once. The scene isn't just done one time. The scene has to be reshot over and over and over again so the camera can be reset for a different setup. So the camera has to be set up to get both of them in the shot, then we run the scene. Then we go back and we reset the scene again. We go to just Kevin. We do a close-up on Kevin. We'll do the whole scene with the camera just on Kevin. We'll do the whole scene with the camera just on Paul. The actors also have to keep in mind they have to do the same thing every time. Because if you do it differently, if you say a line differently, if you make a gesture differently, it won't match the camera shots when they go into the editing room to put it all together.
It's the same thing with continuity. Yeah.
It's continuity again. That's what we call it, continuity. So for an actor on film, not only do you have to have that emotional moment, you've got to recreate that emotional moment again and again, all thinking in your head, I got to do the same thing exactly the same way. It's really hard work. And I don't know if people understand how hard it is to be a film actor. In theater, you're out there on stage live in front of an audience, and what you do is how it goes. And there's some skills to that, but film acting is a different beast altogether.
And it's interesting when you're, it's all shot out of order too. We're not shooting the scenes in the order that they are in the film. So you have to remember, okay, where are we? What did I just come from? What am I doing? What was I just doing, whether it's in the script or not, what emotion am I coming from, where is my character in the story. You have to have that in mind, and you have to reset yourself every time they set up a new camera shot and you're starting the scene over again. You kind of have to reset all of that and be present and in the moment with the person that you're acting with. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And this film, we did a one camera setup. So it really was, we did that scene we didn't do as many times as most of them, but we only did it like 3 times. Do you think we got it all 3 times? Yeah.
Any questions about acting on film or anything about those lines that I don't want to run through, bulldoze through, but if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask. Yes, ma'am. I'm a stage actor, and all my friends are stage actors. All my students that I got into these films were all stage actors. None of us are film actors. And I knew there was a difference because I knew that there are not a lot of Broadway actors who transition to film, and there's not a lot of film actors in Hollywood who transition well onto the stage. There are some that can do it, but it's a surprisingly small number of people. And I never quite understood that until I realized it's a whole different set of skills. It's a whole different way of acting. And I did not know how hard it would be, but honestly, I mean, God's watched over us the whole time because our cast and crew, they made the transition so well. I just gave them some notes at the top, and they just really, everyone worked so hard and transitioned so well. And I've reused a lot of the same actors on the last 3 films, so they've each gotten better as they go. They've gotten to be better film actors all the way through. Now, if you ask them if they like film acting over stage acting, you'll get a big debate. So if you want that, just ask him, do you like film acting or stage acting better? That's a good way to do it. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Oh my goodness.
Spaghetti dinner scene?
Spaghetti dinner scene, how many takes did we have that?
Well,
I think it was like
spaghetti dinner was a family of 5 sitting around a dining room table, having a conversation for about a 2.5, 3 minute scene, which sounds like not much. But every single shot, every character had to have a shot of them in that scene. So that's at least 5 times we had to do the whole scene for each individual character. And then there were 2 characters, like a mother and a son, sitting on one side of the table. We had a 2-shot of them. Then we had another son, sister and brother, something else. I had a 2-shot of them. Dad at the end of the table, another shot. I think we probably had 10 different angles of which to run this scene, each time resetting the food on the plate. Because they were having a spaghetti dinner. I did not know what I was getting us into when I planned a spaghetti dinner. Because the plates have to look clean, like it's the top of the meal every time.
And the faces with the makeup has to be...
and it gets to be a messy. If you've seen Found, you'll see the spaghetti dinner scene. You'll know exactly what we're talking about. But and all the glasses had to be reset to the same level. And then all the actors, in some of these cases were kids. We're talking like 9-year-old actors who had to do the exact same thing every time. I think we started about 8 o'clock in the evening. I think it was probably almost 3 o'clock in the morning before we got that scene done. And we had to retake it probably 10 times around the table. It was insane.
And that was really fast. And the thing is, if you have, say, 10 setups, you have to get 10 different shots. But you're going to end up doing about 4 takes. At least,
some difference.
Honestly,
what's a take as opposed to a setup?
So the setup is what shot you're going for. A take is how many is how many times you're shooting that one setup. So action cut, reset everything. Action cut, reset everything. That's 2 takes. So I think our lucky, or I don't know if it's lucky, but our take number that we would get, the take that was the best take, just technical wise, character wise, acting wise, emotion wise, was take 5 for each one. So we would end up doing, and for that, for the ending sequence I found with in the courthouse, that we had 60 some setups for that
60 setups in one scene. For the last scene in Found, it was a courtroom scene. 60 setups.
So we took almost like 200 takes probably
in one afternoon. And again, we had COVID chasing us the entire time, so we had to finish the film. There was no putting it off for another day. We had days before we were shut down, and if we were shut down, the movie was over. I didn't have enough money to re-rent the equipment and rehire the crew to come back and shoot anymore. So every day we'd check and go, does anyone have a temperature today? No? Okay, we can shoot. And so any moment that film could have been shut down. So with that kind of pressure, we were doing these kind of shots. It was insane, but it was so wonderful because God's presence was there and we felt it and it all was okay. And that's what's crazy about the whole thing. When we tell other filmmakers that's what we did, they're like, that doesn't happen. I'm like, no, it doesn't. But with God's help, it does. And it did. So
because Found was in 2 weeks, and that does not happen. Usually you take at least month to 3 months is an acceptable amount of time to shoot a film. So we were doing it in 2 weeks. Then we even had situations where the location we were supposed to shoot at the next day, the location fell through. And we weren't able to get that location. This was for Found.
It was a football stadium, by the way. You know how I said I had to have a football stadium. The football stadium said no the day before we were supposed to shoot there. Where do you come up with a football stadium?
So one of the people on the crew, we all went and we prayed about it, and then he went and made a phone call, and he got us a football stadium that was I don't know.
So much nicer.
It was so much nicer than what we had before. So that was just an example of, there being a problem and then God giving a solution that was like way better than we had planned. And so that is another reason why you have to be flexible on set, because, it's not just you. God could be directing those things as well.
I don't know how our time is, but I think we're getting close to it. But I wanted to show one more clip and talk about logistics like that. We filmed a scene, a birthday party montage. In the story, the youngest little girl of the family of the abandoned kids has a birthday, and her brothers all forgot it was her birthday. So they had to run around and throw together a birthday party in a big hurry. So in this scene, it's just a montage, meaning it's just music playing and clips. The story is all played out ahead of this. It's the little girl's birthday party. While we were shooting this scene, more things could not have gone wrong if we tried. I mean, we literally had the police show up on set and go, you've got to have this done in an hour and clear out because the neighbors don't like it. So I'm like, okay. So we'll let you see the scene and we'll talk about some of the logistical things that were a nightmare in the scene, but this is how it turned out.
Here comes cake. It's pain. Wow.
It's like a unicorn.
Almost there.
I made the cake. You're supposed to blow out the candle and make a wish.
You can open your present now.
Whoa, a pink pony coloring book.
And you know what Pink Pony's favorite thing to do is, don't you?
She likes to dance under rainbows.
Don't just sit there, show us.
Seems simple enough, doesn't it? Well, that was all filmed in one afternoon, and we were racing the sun going down. If you notice, the sun got darker as the scene was going along. That was the actual sun getting darker as we were shooting. Every shot had to be reset up. The lights had to be reset up. The shade, because we were under sunlight, we had shading that had to be rebuilt over this cast and crew every single time. Well, the way that scene was written, at the end, they were going to have silly string. The boys had found some silly string, and they were going to shoot it over her and let her dance under the colors of the rainbow as the silly string's colors went over her head. Seemed simple enough. Well, it got dark. We couldn't get to the scene before that, so the silly string was not going to show up in the dark. So like, what do we do? That's the whole point of the scene.
It just doesn't look very colorful, and it was
terrible.
Yeah.
So the whole scene and the whole beautiful rainbow thing at the end was gone. And at this point, we're like, what do we do? So my daughter, who was an assistant director, said, well, what about bubbles? We could try bubbles. I don't know, will bubbles show up in the dark? So she ran to this grocery store while we were resetting up the scene, bought some bubbles, and we came back and set all the actors around the girl and blew the bubbles. Well, the lights, the colors hit the bubbles, and all those you saw those colors in the rainbow and the bubbles. And that was a last minute, before they shut us down, decision of what to do, and it turned out beautifully in the film. And then we designed the whole shooting around scene so you could, that was all done in the spur of the moment. That wasn't going to happen that way either.
That was all done in the spur of the moment, and thankfully we hadn't shot the scene before where the brothers find the silly string, so we could change that to be bubbles. Otherwise we would have to reshoot that whole scene, and thankfully we didn't have to.
I mean, logistically, and then like I said, when the police came and said, I'm sorry, y'all have to quit now. We had informed the police department. They actually knew we were there. They've been helping us with the movie the entire time.
They had shut down roads for us.
Yeah, they blocked off roads. So they knew we were coming. They're like, you know, it's 11 o'clock. Y'all got to be done. And we're like, okay, we still had like 2 more scenes to do. There's another scene after this that happens, and we only had that one time. So we had to get it done in an hour. You've never seen a crew reset lights so fast and actors change clothes so fast, but it all turned out beautifully. So God is gracious. He is good. He's keeping us going one step at a time. Royal Ashes is good. Like I said, we're going to premiere this film next Friday night. We're having a world premiere party at the Legacy Theater in Bristol, Virginia, which is at Exit 7. It's just buy a ticket and come join us. It's the 7 o'clock show. The actors from the movie are going to be there in the lobby. The crew that made the movie is going to be there. We're all going to go see. Most of them have not seen the film yet. You guys have seen more than almost all the cast has at this point in time. So they're going to see the film for the first time, and then we're going to meet in the lobby afterwards and just kind of shake hands and meet and greet and talk and enjoy the process. So if y'all want to join us, feel free to do so. I do encourage you to order tickets online though in advance, because the theater's getting a little bit full. And the theater said they would try to open up a second theater if that theater sold out. They gave us the biggest theater they had, but if it sells out, they said they'd open another theater, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. So I'd hate for you to drive over there and us say, I'm sorry, the show's sold out. So, but you can order the tickets online in advance. We have the address if you need it. But if you wanna come join us, it's so much fun to see it all put together and to see how it all happens, to see it change from a page onto that. It's a remarkable process, and it's one that I've loved. I started it, like I said, in my 50s, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. And so if there's a hobby that you want to do, if there's an art you want to express, your age does not matter. Your life experiences go into it. It just gives you more to build your art from. So do not hold back. It is never too late. Don't start something new and have fun with it. And thank you all for entertaining us. We need to give the shirt.
Oh, yeah. Well, does anyone else want to have a question that would be more interesting real quick?
Want to throw a question out?
This is your last chance to, no? Yeah.
Yes, sir. What do you say?
What?
He loves spaghetti.
Oh, the spaghetti, we ate a lot of spaghetti that scene, and we're slurping spaghetti the whole time, which was a lot of fun. And I had a great time eating spaghetti. But I have to say, after that day of shooting, I was okay with not eating spaghetti for a few more weeks. And that's what, because on set they have what they call crafty, which brings all of the food in and everything. So they kept telling us actors, all right, tomorrow morning, spaghetti.
All right, thank you all so much. And if you're interested, we do have found DVDs and cross purposes of the first 2 films. This film will be on DVD, but it's not available yet. It's still being made. So it will be out this summer on DVD. It'll be on streaming platforms everywhere. Amazon Prime will have it. You can recommend it to friends. It'll be on Roku, Tubi. It'll be all over the place on streaming services. This fall, it'll be everywhere. So take a look out for it. But thank you again for your attention and your time. I appreciate you entertaining us going on about it. Thank you so much.